What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, the internet went crazy after Nvidia announced a new version of DLSS, this being DLSS 5. That really had to do with lighting, but once they started showing examples from some recent games, it did not go over well at all, and we're going to go over that here today. Also, we're going to be talking about a pretty big update for the Switch 2 that really works to solve a lot of the issues when it comes to Switch 1 games being played through backwards compatibility, and we also had an update now for the PlayStation 5 Pro with PSSR 2.0, with when you can actually try it out, and some games that will be taking advantage of it right away. All that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Capcom and Resident Evil Requiem, Resident Evil 9, as they had another sales update for us. We can see this is over on their website where they put out this press release saying that Resident Evil Requiem sales exceed 6 million units. They also mentioned it's the fastest that a title in the series has reached this milestone, and that's really why they wanted to put this information out there, is it has now gotten to a position where when launch line, this is the fastest that any game in the Resident Evil franchise has reached this point. And it's expected at this time. I figure before the end of the year, this thing will be a 10 million unit seller. They're also planning to release additional game content, so we're expecting DLC, probably to continue different bits and pieces of the story in the future, whether it's for Leon or Grace or what have you. But yeah, Resident Evil Requiem just rolling along, and this is the strongest, we've seen for the Resident Evil franchise that it's ever been. So I am curious, as we're hearing about different remakes that'll most likely be showing up, but also where the entire franchise goes after Requiem, because one of the reasons it sold really well is because they also tapped like their most popular character with Leon. So it'll be interesting to see the future for the franchise, but at least right now, it's selling like crazy. Also, we've had a recent trend where games are actually being moved up for their release date, Pragmata being the latest example, but now we have another one. Yesterday, this trailer released, and it's only like 15 seconds long. It's for Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. It's coming out May 22nd, so it isn't even moving up a full week. It was originally going to come out right at the end, like the end of May, and now, okay, a little closer here. Why not? Look, the game I think looks awesome, and the Lego games for a while have been very shallow experiences way back in the day. They were fun to play with the family or kids or what have you, but it looks like Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight is much more in-depth, and I think just much more interesting looking. Certainly was one of the standouts last year at a major event, was that Summer Games Fest. So yeah, I'm definitely picking this one up, and apparently picking it up a week early, so keep an eye out for that one. Remark your calendar for May 22nd. Oh, and a quick reminder for GameChat, as at the end of March going into April, it will no longer be free. And I think people may have forgotten about this, since it has been a little while since they, of course, introduced this alongside the Switch 2 launching last June. But GameChat will eventually be behind that subscription paywall of $20 a year then for the online service. But like you can see, this is over on My Nintendo News, with GameChat is included with any Switch Online membership until March 31st, 2026. GameChat can be enjoyed for free. Afterwards, that NSO membership will be required. Now, I do wonder, and you can let me know down in the comments, one, how many people are using GameChat consistently right now, and two, I feel like most people are going to use it for multiplayer games, but let me know if you are someone who uses it to just honestly hang out almost like in a Discord room, but on your Switch 2 while you're playing a game and your friends are playing games, if that's the case, because then I could see how it would be kind of annoying if you're not really playing a lot of online games for the Switch 2 to then have to pay a subscription service just to use a Discord chat room. It is convenient, and you know what? It actually works pretty well when everyone's connected and set up, even without a headset, just talking to the room with the microphone that's activated on the Switch 2. But putting it behind the paywall and then also having a button that leads to that paywall, that sounds like a corporation. All right, figuring that one out. But let me know how you're using GameChat, if at all, still at this point. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nvidia and DLSS 5. Now, we had Nvidia show up yesterday with an entire video showcasing examples in real time, along with an entire press release that they put out over on their site through the news tab. And let's take a look there first. We can start at the top where they say DLSS 5 introduces a real-time neural rendering model that infuses pixels with photoreal lighting and materials, Bridging the divide between rendering and reality, DLSS 5 empowers game developers to deliver a new level of photoreal computer graphics previously only achieved in Hollywood visual effects. Now, this quote is from Jensen Huang, who's the founder and CEO of Nvidia, saying, 25 years after Nvidia invented the programmable shader, we are reinventing computer graphics once again. DLSS 5 is the GPT, probably should have said that, moment for graphics, blending handcrafted rendering with generative AI to deliver a dramatic leap in visual realism while preserving the control artists need for creative expression. They want to say DLSS 5 will come to games including Aeon 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows, Black State, Cinder City, Delta Force, Hogwarts Legacy, Justice, Naraka Blade Point, NTE, Neverness to Everness, Phantom Blade Zero, Resident Evil Requiem, Sea of Remnants, Starfield, The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered, Where Winds Meet, and more. DLSS 5 will arrive this fall. Now you can see some of the examples. The one that, went crazy online, and it's pretty obvious why. With Resident Evil Requiem, in the beginning, you have Grace walking down a street with rain and all this happening, and it's a really good-looking scene. I felt like when I saw it on the PS5 Pro, it was like one of the big, almost aha moments for game visuals. But then they do the little slider effect here, and Grace doesn't really look like Grace anymore. And I will say that so first with DLSS 5, this has to all do with lighting, all right? So they even say that the geometry, assets, that all stays the same, but because they are using this neural network, they are recalculating and changing up the way that light interacts with all these different elements in the scene. And yeah, that does include the character models themselves. And the thing is, it's such a weird shift when they do the slider effect that you start to see what's called, I guess, like the AI filter almost. And it's very, very pronounced on Grace in this image. And so AI, the way it reconstructs scenery, for example, sometimes it'd be kind of easy to tell if it's AI generated, if there's some weirdness, whether it's wording on a wall somewhere that doesn't look like quite right, or even inconsistencies of like a chair or something in the scene. But for the most part, AI is pretty good now, especially at recreating scenery. But humans, it still has this artificial look to it. It almost like plasticky or almost too perfect at times. And it just doesn't look quite right for our brain to kind of comprehend. And it can change the face enough to where we just don't recognize that person anymore. It kind of still looks like them, but it's off a bit. That's what we're seeing with this whole DLSS 5 situation and the lighting. You indeed get that AI effect, that uncanny valley effect, and people are certainly noticing right now. And here's the thing, while a lot of people are focusing right now on the character models, I will admit the scenery aspect, the environments that were being shown looked pretty good with this lighting. When they were showing Assassin's Creed Shadows and it was pretty far zoomed out, and you could see the shift in lighting around the trees or the landscapes, I think that looked like a pretty big jump there. Even when they showed some of the textures on the ground and the lighting came in and shifted all of that, it did look more photorealistic. It's just every time they showed these character models, it just looked worse. It looked like if you had ChatGPT come in and alter the image to clean it up or make it look more realistic. It just didn't really land. And again, it kind of sets off this thing in your mind of, I think I'm looking at a person, but I'm not quite sure. And that has really brought about a lot of the backlash, and it has been fierce online. Digital Foundry is getting it as well. I think they're really mostly impressed by the tech behind all this than the output and what we see with some of these characters. It also appears that many of the developers will have access to tools with this in mind to be able to change almost like sliders and stuff of maybe less AI filter look. And if that's the case, I'm sure they will use it more and more because a lot of these developers do seem to be on board with Bethesda, Capcom, and others really saying, hey, this is awesome. We want to be able to use it more. So it's going to come down to how this continues to evolve over time, because DLSS, if you look at it now with 1, wasn't very good compared to what they have now with, say, 4 and 5 being more lighting going alongside of it, and the fact that they needed two 5090s to be able to do all of this. It's not exactly something that most people are going to be utilizing right now. It's more about the future and the idea of AI coming in, reconstructing a lot of the scenery, but certainly the characters and what does that do to the game's original artistic vision. These are all conversations that are being had now, and it's quite the future on deck. But let me know what you thought when you saw some of those sliders going across. Some people thought it looked really good. Others were like, man, Claude's been busy. Next up, let's talk about an update for the Switch 2 that is now live. This is over on Nintendo's site, and we can see at the top it's version 22.0.0, released yesterday, or last night, March 16th. And they have a number of different things here. There is one part that I think is a really big deal and will work very, very well for backwards compatibility on Switch 1 games. Hopefully, unless there's some weird, like, surprise effects or something that they weren't counting on here. But to start at the top, they changed the on-screen text and animations when you load a virtual game card in the home menu. They added the ability to save notes about friends on your friends list. So your friend won't see it, but you can. So you can talk smack about them, I guess, in your friends list without them knowing. They also added some features and support to GameChat, the ability to invite friends to game chat rooms you're participating in. Before, you would make a room and you have to invite everyone who's going to be in that room right then and there, and it was weird that you couldn't invite people into a room that was in progress. Seems like they've resolved that here, which is, I think, great news. They've also made some updates to the quality of the game screen that's shared in a game chat room when expanded. They add the ability to rewind 10 seconds or advance 10 seconds DLSS when watching a full screen video in the news or Nintendo eShop section. They add the option to add the following data to automatic updates from album, different languages, text to speech under accessibility, add the ability to see the breakdown of storage capacity depending on your system or your microSD express cards, add the ability to perform an audio test. They changed the Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korean region to Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, etc. But the big one here, added handheld mode boost to Nintendo Switch software handling and system. So you can do this now and go into the settings and toggle this on. And I assume it's a toggle because in case you run into any games that have unforeseen issues and it breaks, you can turn it off. But handheld mode boost will cause compatible Switch software to run as if in TV mode, so certain functionality may be affected. Please see the on-device description for more details. Okay, so to me, this is a big deal because clearly the issue with the Switch 2 when it comes to backwards compatibility with the Switch 1, the Switch 1 games are usually capped. I say usually, not always, but I'd say 90% of the time, they're capped at 720p, which means that resolution is stretched to the larger screen on the Switch 2 that is expecting 1080p. But because that's not the case there for many Switch 1 games, it ends up being pretty blurry. But in docked mode on the Switch 1, those games do look to a 1080p max resolution. So if you can take that docked mode experience, move it into handheld, you should, in theory, just get a cleaner looking image. And in some cases, higher frame rates, because there were points where in handheld mode, Switch 1 games even had their frame rate cut down. So this could bode well for many games on the Switch 1 that just looked really bad on the Switch 2 in handheld mode. I brought up the idea of something like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 to see how that may look here, but I also like Bayonetta. That was one that was brought up in many others, but this should be fun to test and see how well some of these games can look now in handheld mode with docked settings for Switch 1 games. So let me know if there are any games you want to try out that immediately come to mind with this handheld boost mode. Next up, let's talk about PSSR 2.0. Sony did put out a blog post yesterday and announced that it would start rolling out that night. So last night, they should be going out. Take a look in your PlayStation 5 settings. That would be under video. And you can see if you have the same toggle there that should enable this. But we can see this over on PlayStation blog, where they say PSSR is an AI library that analyzes each frame pixel by pixel as it upscales game visuals. With this latest evolution, image reconstruction is more precise, motion stability is improved, and developers have greater flexibility to balance performance and fidelity on PS5 Pro. They also went over a number of titles that will be using this new PSSR immediately, so they should be available now. Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill F, Dragon Age the Veilguard, Alan Wake 2, Control. Alan Wake 2 was a big one because that did have a lot of shimmering with the older PSSR, so I'll be curious to see how it looks now with the 2.0 update. Hellblade 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Neo 3, good Good thing I got the platinum and I'm done with that game, and now this update comes through. Rise of the Ronin, Resident Evil Requiem, of course, but Monster Hunter Wilds, that could be a good one there to check out, as well as Dragon's Dogma 2, Cyberpunk 2077, and then Assassin's Creed Shadows. So if you want to turn this on, you can also toggle it for games that aren't necessarily listed here, but do have PSSR, like the 1.0 version that is included, or it's compatible with it. You can try this new PSSR 2.0 with it and kind of just see what happens. But if you go into your video output settings, there is an enhanced PSSR image quality toggle. Go ahead and turn that on and fire up a game that's not listed here but has PSSR and kind of see what happens. Now, people are going back and forth. They're like, hold on, PSSR is AI and then DLSS is AI as well. Like 5 is the AI, and people are mad at that, but not at this. This is just mostly upscaling. That's the thing. DLSS 5, like, fundamentally changed how some of these games looked when it came to the characters, the art style, like, everything. But PSSR is more in line with, like, DLSS 4, for example, and how that broke onto the scene, and people went, wow, this looks really good. And then they've consistently updated it so that the upscaling itself looks almost like native, like resolution. So that to me is the big difference here. Now, if PSSR gets to a point where it does lighting and it really shifts the way the games look outright, you'd probably see a similar backlash, especially if it had the old AI filter effect. For now, though, it's just making the games look crisper, as Mark Cerny said. So check out your PS5 settings if you have a PS5 Pro and see if you have this toggle so you can try it out with some of these games. And in our last bit of news, let's go back to our continued coverage of what has been one of the more interesting run-ups to a release. That's Crimson Desert. All right, we have more coverage here because trophies seem to just kind of leak out online, and like you can see some of the slides here. Now, this is over on ppe.pl, and there are 35 trophies for Crimson Desert. The thing that was so funny and people were mentioning here, the description of these trophies are just very odd. Like even these are mysterious, right? Like some of them are like the hidden beauty of Pywell has been revealed, trials overcome have paved the way back home. Sharp insight now guides you through any riddle. Like these trophies also sound like riddles on their own. It's very obtuse and just roundabout for that. Like you might go through a trophy list and it's like, find like 8 of these or so, you know, it's very straightforward. It's not necessarily always playing into the theme of the game either. Not the case here though. It's like one of them is countless adventures await beyond the horizons. Like, thanks, Crimson Desert. Can we get the PlayStation game help in here for this one? So it's just, that's where we are with this game. It's so mysterious right now, especially on like a base PS5, that when we see the trophy list come out, people are scouring through it, trying to find clues as to what exactly this game even is. I know it's big open world, MMO-like, but single player, action, adventure style RPG, but there's just a lot of questions still around how the game will run, and what exactly the scope is it really fleshed out, or does it feel very wide, but also very shallow in its, in what it presents here? So man, I am so curious to see the launch of this game, as well as the reviews. Only a few more days, and I guess we'll at least have all of that, so we'll see what happens here soon. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, what model PS5 do you have? So as expected, the leading vote was the original PlayStation 5, 48%, but the PS5 Pro for PlayStation 5 owners, as 29% just say they don't have a PS5, the Pro is actually ahead of the Slim, 14%, the Slim at 9%. And you know, I guess that does make sense, because if you were going to upgrade from the PS5 original, you're probably not upgrading to the Slim. At least I assume you're not. You're probably upgrading to the PS5 Pro, and I feel like the PS5 Slim would mostly be new owners or someone who wants a second system, and they're like, oh, the Slim, sure, I'll go ahead and grab that one. But it does seem like the PS5 Pro has maybe a larger audience than people were necessarily expecting for a system that was $700 when it came out. Now it's $750 without a disc drive. You want to play physical media, yeah, you're over $800, but still a fair amount of people here, at least that are watching the show here and voting on these polls, at least does have the upgraded Pro system. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from LW Allen, who says 3D Mario game reveal being shown at the end of the movie would be something. It'd be really fun as if somewhere in the movie, Nintendo had like an Easter egg of some kind. Like, okay, so let's say you have Mario and Luigi in the foreground, and then the background slightly blurred. There's a TV that has maybe the code name for the new 3D Mario game on there. We don't recognize it right away, but then we do eventually have a new 3D Mario revealed to us this generation. And then later in an interview, we get the code name. We're like, wait a minute. Somebody notices, oh, they told us what the code name was way back when they had the Super Mario Galaxy movie in theaters. Just things like that to kind of tie together the two mediums, as Nintendo clearly, you know, they're big time right now in the movie theater with their box office push, and sure, but be able to tie that back to the Switch too in some fun way, that would be really, really cool. Even if they just kind of planted the seeds now, and then we really didn't really didn't know what we were seeing until much later, it would just be something that would be fun to look back on. But I don't know if Nintendo would actually do that. Still, could make for a really, really cool Easter egg someday. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to hear more about the MacBook Neo and what exactly is going on inside of that system that maybe Apple didn't necessarily say. I did an entire video breaking that down, and I'll leave it right below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.